speaker. He is Executive Director from Singapore Environmental Council. He will be giving a talk on the titled Singapore Story. So please welcome Jose Raymond.
The last time I visited Penang was in 2004 when I covered the Malaysian general elections. Not much has changed, which is not exactly a bad thing. Okay. So with that, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for being here, actually. This is what I'm going to cover. What makes a city green? What's been our environmental journey, the Singapore journey, from the 50s up to now, which is about a 50-year journey so far. How do we shift from a grounds-up versus a top-down? Initially it was very much top-down, but how do we shift gradually to making it grounds-up? The 5 E's of our environmental management, the role of the SEC, a couple of our current projects, and some of our future plans. Okay, so you've heard this before. Almost half of the world's population of humans reside in cities today, and it will increase moving forward. Reasons are very clear. Sustainably built cities, environmentally friendly cities are areas in which you are able to work, live, play, have lots of good food, and yet be able to have fun. And you do not need to actually do much to move around because everything is just right there. Just like Singapore, just like Penang. By 2030, 60% or more of the world's population will actually be residing in cities. And urban growth now is the most rapid and developing world. These are things which you've heard a lot before, okay? So to my previous point, are cities a more sustainable way of life? This is what Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan, who's our current Minister for the Environment and Water Resources, I served as his press secretary in my last appointment. He said this at the APEC Sustainability Summit in March last year. The per capita cost of providing the essentials of life for human beings, shelter, food, water, electricity, education, healthcare, transportation, and jobs, are much lower in a dense city than in a suburban sprawl or even in the rural countryside. Living in a well-planned, the keywords are well-planned, dense city is in fact more sustainable way of life for human beings in decades to come. So let me just give you a very simple example. The cost of having a pipe from the water producer or the water manager to one agricultural unit in the hinterland will cost a lot more than having that pipe be given to one block of flats, for example, one block of condominium housing. So that's what we're looking at. And that's the problem which we face moving forward. So what makes a city green? If I ask Dr. Sita what's the definition of a green city, she'll have one definition. If I ask any one of you, what is your definition of a green city? All of you will have different definitions because all of us see things from very different perspectives. In Singapore's Sustainable Singapore Blueprint, our key priorities were to improve resource efficiency, improve the quality of our environment, build up our knowledge, and encourage community ownership and participation. So with that, the government had a whole bunch of focus group discussions with specific themes, with targeted stakeholders, to understand what exactly they wanted in terms of the environment. Because as I was telling a few of our participants earlier, it is very hard to connect when we are here in a very densely urbanized city and we talk about climate change and we show images of melting ice caps or a polar bear, because people, we will not connect very easily. So the point is, how do we get a message across and get people to understand that they can do something? So our key focus areas outlined 3 years ago were clean air, climate change, water waste management, public health, conserving nature, and international environment relations. So this has been our 50-year journey so far. Interestingly, in the 50s when we started out, we had roadside hawkers. Actually, you still have it in Penang, which is kind of nice. But the government of the day in Singapore back then decided that they did not want to have roadside hawkers for health reasons, for public health purposes. So we started moving them away from the roads and into hawker centers or food courts. So we moved our public hawkers, our roadside hawkers into areas which they could actually still manage their businesses, but with better sanitation. And we improved sanitation, water resources management. Okay, that was the first 10 years. And we had a lot of campaigns like Keep Your City Clean, Operation Cleanup, Gerakan Pembersihan Bandaraya Singapura, sorry, my Malay is a bit koyak, Anti-Cholera Campaign, Keep Our State Clean. So these were all the campaigns which were running for the first 20 years. And the objectives were obviously, to instill the importance and awareness of environmental cleanliness, to impose fines on the public for the first time. These were some of the tactics we used. And we also used social pressure, which means we embarrass all our litterbugs by making them wear vests and going cleaning up the street, the city. And then in the 70s and 80s, we moved into a period of industrialization. And this photo, which you see on your left, actually is our Singapore River. This was in the 70s. I will show you what it is right now later on. Okay, so what we also did was we started providing, when I say we, I say the government of Singapore, started providing infrastructure for waste management, as well as enforcing and administering legislation in areas of pollution control, public health. And again, in the 70s, our campaigns started taking on a lot more friendlier awareness, a lot more friendlier tones, like the kind of images we used, the colors we used, the words which we used. Started using the word please a lot more, because sometimes it makes a lot of difference, because if you tell people when it's top down, do this, do that, they're going to say, no, I'm not going to do it. So when you say please, I say, okay, maybe I'll give it to you. Okay, I'll do it, fine. So it's sometimes the way which you get across. So now let me tell you what it is like now. The shift in our approach has been to involve a lot of grounds-up techniques. So very similar to what the Penang Green Council does. And also because technology has allowed people to be a lot more knowledgeable of environmental issues. Every one of you in the room, I hope most of you, I think, will probably have a smartphone. And you can probably just go into Google, do climate change, and you probably know a lot more than a lot of other people out there. Just recently, I was reading an environmental economics textbook. And the American professor, in the very first chapter, talks about very broad strokes, issues of climate change and how it affects economies. And after that first chapter ended, he started off his second chapter by saying, congrats on finishing your first chapter. You are now more knowledgeable of environmental issues than 95% of the American population. So you see, the way in which we consume news today actually has made us a lot more knowledgeable of environmental issues and many other issues, politics, sports, name it. So the way in which we've shifted our approach have also changed. Now there's a lot of engagement with partners. We use a lot of social media, a lot of advertising to get out. And obviously the government works with a lot more partners than before. So it's a lot more grounds up than top down. Okay, so things like land pollution, we have got a lot less space than Penang does actually. So the way in which we manage our land is a lot more complicated. And there's a lot of head banging sometimes, but I think we are usually governed by the fact that we need to do what's right for our people. Especially because we have got a lot less space. So sometimes there'll be a lot of head banging, a lot of unhappy people, but there must be a way in which all parties come together and there's an equilibrium in how we move forward. This is just another one of our programs which we do together with the public agency, the National Water Agency. And in terms of policies, we've made mandatory waste reporting for all major businesses. They must submit their waste data, and this is mandatory by law. We've also started a food waste reduction work group on how to reduce our food waste, because Singaporeans waste an amazing amount of food on an annual basis. So we've actually started an inter-ministry agency to identify where the gaps are and to really reduce the amount of food waste which we have. And that's also critical, because if you understand the whole dynamics of how climate change will affect food security, especially in countries like Singapore and maybe even Penang, you understand that we need to really reduce the amount of food waste which we have. Very quickly, after all of that, our 5E approach to environmental management has been engineering, economics, education, enforcement, and engagement. Now, this photo which you see is also of our Singapore River. This is the barrage which leads into the Singapore River, so it's actually the same photo which you saw earlier. Okay, and this is now one of our catchment areas for water. So what we did was we dammed up the river from flowing out into the sea, and we've turned it into our water, one of our reservoirs. So engineering, we've always been developing infrastructures in the 60s and competing demands for funding. So you take a look at the kind of money our government spends on investments. $2 billion spent on drainage development projects over the last 30 years, $1.8 billion on sewerage and used water treatment infrastructure, $3.65 billion on construction of a deep tunnel sewerage system, $270 million in creating the Marina Barrage. That's the dam which I spoke to you about earlier. Another $100 million on Singapore's first incineration plant in 1973. This is the kind of investment which you need to really turn your city into a really fully fledged city which really cares about the environment, because everything we should do has got to be some kind of link to public health, some kind of link to the kind of water resources we have, some kind of link to waste management. And the other thing which we always do is constant innovation. In terms of economics, we also ensure that our services are produced efficiently and scarce environmental resources are priced right. To the point earlier this morning about why is it our water is the most expensive in the world, among the most expensive in the world, is because in order to have people understand its true value, it needs to be priced right. The tariff needs to be right. If not, there's going to be amazing amounts of wastage. Okay, so likewise for electricity, none of our water and electricity, there's no subsidies given by the government at all. At all. Okay, so what happens is rising resource prices would be, what happens is what we do is it's a key priority for us to study the ways to improve the overall resource efficiency and to optimize the kind of scarce resources which we have. So in short, we really need to value what we have, and the government makes the people of Singapore recognize that there is a true value to whatever they use, and which ends up, with as little waste as possible. I mean, just to give you an example, we use on average per capita about 150 liters of water per day per person. You compare that to Penang. Penangites use double of that a day. So that's the difference. Obviously, you only pay like 30 cents or something like that. So, education, the other E, I mean, obviously education is a very critical factor. Education really starts from the young onwards. It takes sometimes a whole generation to change mindsets, because human behavior is the most difficult to change. So education is critical. Enforcement and engagement, well, enforcement essentially means we still have to use fines in order to get people to change their behavior. Just so you know, if a member of the public in Singapore is caught littering, guess what's the fine? First time, 500 Singapore dollars. Second time, $1,000. Third time, you spend a couple of days in prison. These are facts. Okay, so that's how we value our cleanliness. But again, you cannot have enforcement officers all around the country. So what did the government in conjunction with SEC do? What we did was we trained a whole bunch of community volunteers. So all around the country, you'll have additional eyes, and all of our volunteers have got warrant cards to act. So which means if they see someone littering, they can actually get up produce a warrant card, get the guy to pick up. If he doesn't pick up, we will do a report and the person gets fined. So in a way, we've expanded the role of the community volunteers and the environmental enthusiasts because they want to do something. So we're making them feel motivated to do something by giving them a warrant card. Obviously, we test them first. We make sure they've got all the right skill sets. Anyone who's very aggressive, will not get the card. But these are different tactics, okay? And of course, engagement, very critical. So anyway, just very quickly, the SEC, like the Penang Green Council, I think the PGC is very much, model or sounds very much like what we are in the SEC. The public perception of such councils is very important. Whether they view as credible, whether they'll listen to you. Okay, so anyway, just to show you, again, this is our Marina Barrage, which is now part of our water supply. On a bad day when there's haze, this is what it looks like. On a good day, it looks like this. So you see the difference and the importance of three critical things as human beings: clean air, a clean city, and clean water. Just three things. Okay, so just again, the kind of work which we do. We also started a white paper on our plastic bag to reduce the amount of plastic bags used in Singapore. As usual, it creates a lot of tension because people are very upset. But it's fine. And this is the consultation exercise which we did throughout the whole of Singapore earlier this year to understand what people thought of the environment, to understand what people's views of the environment, and whether they were in sync with what we were thinking. Because the problem with all of us is we are enthusiasts. We do care already. We already know a little bit. The challenge for all of us is how do we reach out to people who do not care or do not know? Because that's a critical challenge. So in order to understand what they are thinking, it's easier for us to actually work on our policies. Okay, so I'll just give you very quickly what the Singaporeans today want from the environmental policies. They want an early intervention, stronger attitude, impactful education, better signals and messages, strong advocacy from the people sector. They want exemplary conduct from Singaporeans in all walks of life. They want to use peer influence. They want better and greener infrastructure, stronger role of the public sector, which is the government, better incentives, stronger CSR, proactive private sector. They want us to have they want all of us to have a green reflex, which means you must think green, act green, do green. Stronger legislation, regulation, and leaders in green technology. And Singaporeans, not us, Singaporeans identified that these were the three values which they really felt about. They care for their home, they want to take ownership of the community, and they want to take responsibility. So this is what we aspire to be: a thriving Singapore, a secure Singapore, a cutting-edge Singapore, kind and gracious and beautiful. Okay, so with that, I thank you very much.